I was standing on my front porch, coffee in hand, watching the sprinklers hiss across the identical beige houses of Willow Creek Estates, when the mail carrier dropped a thick certified envelope at my feet like it was a live grenade. "Ryan Hayes?" he asked, already backing away. Inside was a lawsuit. Not a warning, not a fine. A full-blown lawsuit from the Willow Creek Homeowners Association demanding $18,400 in back dues, late fees, and enforcement costs. They claimed I was violating community standards and living in a non-compliant structure. That would have been hilarious anywhere else. But this was my house, the one I'd bought 10 years before their precious gated phase even existed. No shared roads, no HOA services, no covenant in my deed. Just a quiet corner lot with solar panels on the roof, and a wildflower garden the neighbors secretly envied. One line in the complaint jumped out like a middle finger. Failure to remit outstanding dues will result in lien, foreclosure proceedings, and forced compliance. I read it twice while the morning sun glinted off my panels like they were laughing. This wasn't about money. This was about control. And the woman behind it all, Victoria Lang, HOA president, pastel blazer queen, professional smile with teeth sharp enough to cut glass, had decided my little slice of suburbia was now her next conquest. I wasn't some rebel. I was just a 38-year-old remote tech guy trying to raise my kid after the divorce, keep the grass under 4 inches, and maybe enjoy my morning coffee without someone measuring it. I checked every document before closing. Clear title. No HOA, county records clean as a whistle. For a decade nobody cared. Then the new phase went up, shiny gates, identical mailboxes, and suddenly Karen. "Sorry, Victoria." Smelled fresh meat. The first letter arrived 2 days later. Not from a lawyer. From her. Sweet as artificial sweetener. "Dear neighbor, the board has noticed your property now falls within our expanded influence zone. We're so excited to welcome you into the Willow Creek family. Please remit dues immediately to avoid further action. Blessings, Victoria Lang, President." I actually laughed out loud. Influence zone? Sounded like something a dictator would invent after 3 martinis. Then the phone rang. Her voice was all honey and razor blades. "Ryan, darling, we've been so patient. You've been benefiting from our security patrols and streetlights for years. It's only fair." I kept my tone flat. "Victoria, my house isn't in your subdivision. Never was." Long pause. Then the mask slipped just a hair. "That's not how community works, Ryan. We've grown. Rules apply whether you like it or not." Click. 3 days later she showed up in person. Silver SUV gleaming like a trophy, clipboard in one manicured hand, sunglasses that probably cost more than my panels. She marched up my driveway like she owned the concrete. "Ryan, we really must discuss your solar panels. They're so visible. And that garden, darling, it looks like weeds. Community standards require uniform landscaping." I leaned on the porch rail. "What community, Victoria? Show me where my deed says I joined yours." She smiled the smile of someone who'd never been told no. "The board passed a boundary expansion amendment last year. You're inside the zone now. Simple as that." I asked for the map. She didn't have one. Just confidence and a veiled threat. "We've already calculated your back dues. If you don't cooperate, we'll file the lien." It doesn't have to get ugly. Behind her, a couple of neighbors had drifted out. Perfect lawns, perfect smiles, perfect fear in their eyes. They knew the drill. Question Victoria, and suddenly your trash cans are unsightly, and fines rain like confetti. She lowered her voice like we were old friends sharing a secret. "Think of the property values, Ryan. Think of your son's future." Black humor hit me hard. The woman lecturing me about my son's future while trying to steal my house. Classic. That night I spread every document I owned across the kitchen table. Deed. Survey. Purchase agreement. County plat maps. My land ended exactly where it always had. Separated from their gated paradise by nothing but a row of hedges and a legal line they apparently found inconvenient. But Victoria wasn't playing by paper. She was playing by power. And power, I was learning, doesn't need to be real. It just needs everyone to believe it is. The next morning I drove to the county recorder's office. Pulled every filing with the HOA name on it. Original declaration, amendments, boundary exhibits. That's when I saw it. A document titled Boundary Expansion Amendment, dated 3 years ago. It claimed the HOA now covered adjacent parcels for uniformity and enhanced community services. My parcel ID was listed. So were 4 other edge lots owned by retirees and a single mom who worked nights. People who wouldn't fight back. People like me. I felt the relief hit first, then the rage. They knew. They had to know. Because right there on the signature page were problems even a blind man could spot. Missing notary stamp. One board member who'd moved to Florida 2 years earlier somehow signing. Another signature that looked suspiciously like Victoria's own handwriting, wearing a different name. No county recording number. No clerk approval. Just Victoria's perfect cursive at the bottom, like she was signing a birthday card instead of committing fraud. 2 days later another envelope arrived. Updated fines. New penalties. Administrative fees for non-response. They weren't correcting a mistake. They were doubling down. Then the emails started. Subject lines in all caps. Red text screaming final notice. I stopped answering. That's when the real fun began. Neighbors who used to wave now looked away. Victoria had been busy. I overheard her at the community mailbox one afternoon, voice carrying like she wanted me to hear. It's just so selfish, isn't it? Some people want all the benefits without contributing. It affects everyone's property values. Bless her heart. The same woman who once fined Mrs. Alvarez $250 for having her American flag out 2 days past July 4th was now preaching about fairness. The pressure built slow like a kettle left on the stove. Every knock at the door made my stomach tighten. Every unfamiliar car on the street felt like a scout. I started sleeping in short bursts, waking to check my phone like a paranoid ex. I knew I was right. But being right doesn't stop a lien from poisoning your credit. Doesn't stop banks from raising an eyebrow. Doesn't stop your kid from asking why everyone at school suddenly thinks his dad is the neighborhood villain. One morning I found a bright yellow notice taped to my door. Intent to place lien. It claimed I owed money for services I'd never received. No security patrol ever came down my dead-end street. No snow removal, we're in Texas. No streetlights on my side of the hedges. Just pure fiction dressed up as official paperwork. I sat on the porch holding that notice and laughed the kind of laugh that tastes like rust. This wasn't confusion. This was strategy. Victoria was betting I'd fold, pay up, admit jurisdiction, and open the door for every future demand. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was testing how much silence she could buy. That afternoon the formal complaint arrived. Case number, court stamp, plaintiff, Willow Creek HOA defendant, me. They weren't threatening anymore. They were coming for the house. I stood on the porch looking at the identical beige roof stretching into the distance and realized something cold and clear. This wasn't about dues. It was about precedent. If Victoria could drag my independent little house into her kingdom, she could drag anyone. And the best part? She'd done it all on paper she thought nobody would read. But I was reading. Every single word. And I was just getting started. The lawsuit changed the air in Willow Creek. Before, it still felt like a bad dream I could wake from. After the filing, every communication came wrapped in lawyer speak. Cold, precise, threatening in its politeness. The HOA's attorney sent a demand letter. Pay $18,400 immediately to pause proceedings. Not dismiss, just pause. Pay first, argue later. Classic trap. One check and I'd be admitting I belonged to them. Forever. At the same time the harassment went low-key but relentless. The county suddenly wanted to re-inspect my septic, approved 8 years ago. The power company left voicemails about future grid connection plans, even though I'd never asked. Nothing official. Just enough questions to make me feel surrounded. Victoria kept her distance in person but worked the crowd. I'd drive past the community pool and catch her chatting with clusters of homeowners, gesturing toward my end of the street, voice loud enough to carry. We simply can't have exceptions. It sets a terrible precedent. Think of the children. The children who, last I checked, were banned from playing basketball in their own driveways after 7 p.m. Neighbors I used to borrow tools from now crossed the street. One guy I'd helped install a ceiling fan last summer actually muttered, "Sorry man, I can't get involved," before speed walking away. Isolation is a hell of a weapon. You don't get attacked outright. You just slowly disappear from the group chat of normal life. The legal bills started stacking like Jenga blocks. Every email from my attorney costs money. Every document review. Every phone call. I started measuring time in invoices instead of days. Victoria's side stayed eerily quiet on the jurisdiction question. No proof. No map. Just deadlines and the growing threat of a court-ordered inspection. Strangers walking my yard, measuring my solar panels, documenting my unsightly garden like it was a crime scene. One evening I drove past the model homes and saw Victoria holding court near the entrance, pointing toward my house, laughing with a group of new residents. The story she was selling was clear. I was the freeloader. The guy who wanted beauty without paying for the rules that supposedly created it. I sat in my car gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. Then I did the only thing left. I hired the kind of attorney who doesn't just read deeds, he dissects them like autopsies. Land use specialist. First meeting he didn't want my feelings. He wanted paper. Every filing. Every amendment. Every signature. We sat in his office with my documents spread like evidence at a murder trial. He flipped pages in silence, then tapped one line. This boundary expansion amendment? It's the smoking gun. And it's smoking because it's on fire. He showed me what I'd already suspected but couldn't prove alone. The amendment was never recorded with the county. No clerk stamp. No recording number. Signatures that didn't match prior filings. One board member had died 6 months before the vote. Another had moved out of state. The notary block was blank. And buried in the HOA's own financials? A line item projecting increased revenue from expanded parcels, right after the fake document appeared. Victoria had also quietly purchased the lot directly behind mine 6 weeks before the amendment surfaced. Once her expansion passed, that empty lot suddenly became prime real estate inside the protected zone. Value jumped 20% overnight. My attorney leaned back. She didn't just expand the HOA Ryan. She expanded her own wallet. This isn't enforcement. It's embezzlement with extra steps. The fear I'd been carrying for weeks didn't vanish. It sharpened into something useful. I wasn't defending my house anymore. I was exposing a con artist wearing a pastel blazer and calling it governance. We spent the next 2 weeks building the kill file, timelines, side-by-side signature comparisons, county rejection letters, financial disclosures. Every lie Victoria had told was now in black and white. And the best part? She had no idea I had it. Then came the HOA annual meeting. The hall was packed. Folding chairs. Bad coffee. The smell of fear and Febreze. Victoria sat at the head table like a queen holding court, microphone gripped like a scepter. She opened with the usual script. Rising costs, the importance of unity, how exceptions destroy property values. Then she smiled right at me. We have one homeowner who feels he's above the rules. But we're a family. We work together. The room shifted. I flicked my way. I stood up slowly, no notes, just a USB drive and printed maps. Actually, Victoria, I don't live in your family. My house isn't even on the guest list. I walked to the front and laid the county plat on the table. Red line showing their original boundary. My lot sitting peacefully outside it. Murmurs started. Victoria's smile tightened. That's your interpretation, she cut in smoothly. The board expanded the zone years ago for everyone's benefit. I smiled back, the first real one in months. Funny you mentioned that. Because the county has no record of any expansion. No vote. No signatures that hold up. No approval. In fact, I clicked the projector. Side-by-side images of forged signatures filled the screen. Gasps. Victoria's face went the color of cheap Chardonnay. Someone in the back, old Mr. Hargrove, who'd lived here 30 years, stood up. Wait. If you can just add properties without telling us, what's stopping you from changing my backyard next year? The room erupted. Victoria tried to regain control, voice rising. This meeting is not about documents. It's about compliance. But the spell was broken. People were pulling out phones, whispering, realizing the same machine that came for me could come for them. Victoria slammed the gavel, or tried to. It was just a pen, and declared the meeting adjourned early. As I walked out, a few neighbors actually nodded. Not quite allies yet. But the fear had changed direction. It was no longer pointed at me. That night I stood on my porch looking at the identical houses glowing under streetlights and felt something shift. Victoria thought she was tightening the noose. She'd actually handed me the rope. Court was 3 weeks later. No dramatic music. Just fluorescent lights and the smell of desperation. Victoria sat across the aisle in her best power pastel, attorney whispering frantically. She looked smaller under the harsh lights. Less queen, more cornered animal. The judge, older guy who'd clearly seen every HOA scam in the book, opened by asking the only question that mattered. Is the defendant's parcel legally subject to this association? Victoria's attorney jumped up. Your Honor, the expansion amendment clearly. The judge raised a hand. Show me the recorded document. Silence. The kind that tastes like victory. My attorney slid the certified county records across. No expansion. No approval. Forged signatures highlighted in red. The judge read in silence, then looked straight at Victoria. You personally benefited from this so-called expansion, correct? Your additional lot increased in value. Victoria opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The mask was gone. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. This court is dismissing the claims with prejudice. The plaintiff had no jurisdiction, fabricated authority, and appears to have submitted misleading documents. Costs awarded to the defendant. And I'm referring this matter to the State Bar for further review. Victoria's face went white. Her attorney started stammering about good faith. The judge cut him off. Good faith doesn't include forgery, counselor. I walked out of that courtroom feeling the weight of months lift off my shoulders. Victoria didn't look at me. She just gathered her papers with shaking hands and disappeared down the hallway like the ghost of every petty tyrant who finally met paper they couldn't fake. The HOA didn't announce defeat with trumpets. They did it the way cowards always do, quietly, in revisions and resignations no one talked about at the pool. First the county records updated. The fake boundary amendment vanished like it had never existed. Then the letters stopped. Not just to me. To everyone on the edge lots. Fines evaporated. Compliance demands expired. The machine that had tried to swallow my house simply powered down. Neighbors started talking again. Awkward at first. Sorry about all that, one dad mumbled while we both checked mailboxes. She made it sound like you were trying to tank everyone's values. Another neighbor, the single mom from 2 streets over, left a 6-pack on my porch with a note. Thank you for fighting. I was next. Fear makes people small. Truth makes them brave again. Victoria didn't resign dramatically. People like her never do. She just stopped showing up to meetings. Missed one then too. Her name stayed on the roster for a while like a bad smell, but the board quietly removed her after an audit surfaced, irregular legal expenses, tied directly to her pet projects. Turns out forging documents and suing innocent homeowners costs money. Who knew? The new president, some retired accountant who actually read the bylaws, called me personally. Mr. Hayes, the board wants to apologize for the misunderstanding. I laughed. No misunderstanding. Your predecessor committed fraud. But apology accepted, as long as the rules go back to boring. They did. Lawn height stayed at 4 inches. Mailbox color stayed beige. But nobody got fined for having solar panels anymore. Nobody got threatened for planting wildflowers. The HOA shrank back into what it was always supposed to be, a boring committee that collected dues for pool cleaning, not a personal fiefdom. I never went back to another meeting. Didn't need to. My house stayed exactly as it was. Solar panels gleaming. Wildflowers blooming. My kid riding his bike in the driveway without worrying about aesthetic violations. Peace didn't return with fireworks. It returned in small, permanent pieces. Mornings where I drank coffee without checking for yellow notices. Evenings where the only sound was cicadas instead of dread. Months later I heard Victoria listed her extra lot for sale. Quietly. No fanfare. Price a little lower than she probably hoped. I felt zero satisfaction watching it happen. Just closure. Because this was never about watching her fall. It was about stopping the fall before it took my house with it. Authority only works when people believe it's legitimate. Victoria tried to replace legitimacy with confidence, spreadsheets, and a smile that could freeze hell. It almost worked because most people just want to live their lives without court dates and lawyers. They don't want the fight. And that's exactly what people like her count on. But the moment one person stops playing scared, the whole illusion cracks. Documents don't lie. County records don't care about pastel blazers. And judges, the good ones, can smell a power grab from across the courtroom. I still walk my property line sometimes. Not because I'm afraid it'll move again, but because I know exactly where it is now. Not just on paper. In principle. Peace isn't something you're given by permission. It's something you defend when someone tries to take it. So here's the question I keep turning over in my head every time I see another HOA story pop up online. Was Victoria Lang really the villain, or was she just doing her job, protecting property values the only way she knew how? Was the real crime my refusal to pay for a club I never joined, or her willingness to forge documents and terrorize neighbors to protect her own investment? You tell me. Right or wrong? Because the next time an HOA Karen shows up at your door with a clipboard and a smile, you might be the one who has to decide.